What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. And this one is some of my final thoughts ahead of the Game Week 22 deadline. So as always, I'm going to start with the latest team news, then go through some of your benching headaches. There were a ton of players submitted this week, answer loads of your questions, and then finish off by talking about my own team as well. So let's get into it. So let's start with the latest team news. For Chelsea, Liam Rosenior said that Delap and Gittins are still recovering from illness, so presumably there's a high chance they won't be in the squad this weekend. I have had some questions about João Pedro as an option moving forward, given how good Chelsea's fixtures are. Personally, I find it difficult to recommend him as an option right now, because when Delap is back, he can obviously play number 9, and I don't think it's a guarantee that João Pedro always plays number 10 when Delap's playing number 9. Palmer can play 10. They could even play Santos and Caicedo in midfield and Enzo Fernandez as a number 10. I just don't think João Pedro's minutes are secure enough, so I would ignore him. Cole Palmer and Reece James are back in training. They weren't in the squad for the Carabao Cup game midweek. I think Palmer's just going to start, to be honest with you. I can't guarantee that, because apparently he had a thigh injury, which is different to the groin problem that he's been suffering with. So there is a chance he's just in the squad and on the bench. And it does seem pretty clear from what Rossini has been saying, he is going to listen to the medical staff, and Palmer will be managed if he needs to be. So obviously there's a chance Palmer's just on the bench, same with James, but I think he's going to start. He has started 7 games in a row as well. I've talked a lot about Palmer this week. I don't have anything new to say in terms of whether he's essential for 24 to 27. Ultimately, I think I've got that sinking feeling that he's just not. I think the chances of a benching between 24 and 27 are quite high because of how quickly those games come around. Like the Wolves to Leeds turnaround is 3 days. There is a chance that Palmer is benched for one of those Premier League games. But because of what we have seen in the past, albeit, as people have pointed out, not for a while, he's still going to be a good option even with limited minutes. It's just whether you're prepared to pay that money. Like, how much does putting Cole Palmer into your team affect all the other moves you want to make? I'm sort of coming around to the idea of just ignoring him, but I still, part of me just doesn't want to completely write off that option. And on Sanchez, this was part of a much longer answer to whether Sanchez is his number 1. So I am paraphrasing a lot, right? It was quite a long answer. But basically he said he doesn't have number 1 and number 2 goalkeepers. Just like he doesn't have first choice number 9s. You've got to fight for your place. There's a lot of talk that Sanchez basically is not as good with his feet. And Rossini wants his goalkeeper to play a little bit less direct, essentially. And that there is a chance Sanchez could get dropped. Basically, if you've got Sanchez, don't panic. Wait and see what happens. But I wouldn't buy him. If I was on Wildcard this week, or I wanted to change my goalkeeper, I would not take the risk with Sanchez. There's absolutely every chance that he just plays every single game for the rest of the season. But based on what Rossini has said, there is a chance he switches goalkeeper at some point. So I just wouldn't bother taking the risk. That's Chelsea, quite long. Bournemouth, Brooks, I know some people look to him as a cheap option. Obviously, Semenyo's gone, Kluivert's injured. Brooks' minutes might go up. He's only 5 million, but he is a slight doubt for Game Week 22, so just don't go there. For West Ham, Paquetá is a doubt. So are Fernandez and Mavropanos, although the latter two probably not so much of an issue for FPL. Look, most of you probably don't own Paquetá. I just think if you've got a transfer, just sell him. If your team looks good and you can bench him, you can put the decision off until next week, that's also fine. But there's so much stuff going on with him at the moment. It just feels inevitable that he's going to leave in January. I just don't know if he's worth this headache. Yes, Sunderland at home next week is good, but I think for most people, you'd probably just get rid. I wouldn't take a hit to do it. I'd rather play whoever I've got on the bench for the most part, but he's probably got to go. And then for Fulham, Marco Silva kind of reconfirmed that Menez is likely out till the middle of February. So if you've got Jimenez or you're looking at him, he's probably safe for minutes until then. So for Spurs, Richarlison has picked up an injury and it looks like he's going to be out for about 7 to 8 weeks. So he's not going to be back until March. I don't think that really has a knock-on effect for FPL, where because he's out, someone else suddenly becomes a good pick. I think for the most part, I would just ignore buying any Spurs attackers right now. I just think there's a little bit too much uncertainty. Like, Muani can obviously play number 9, but then Solanke was in the squad for their FA Cup match. So does he come back in and play number 9 if he can finally get himself fit? And obviously Conor Gallagher's signed as well now. He's priced at 5.5 million in FPL. Now that might end up being a good price. He's going to play a lot of minutes, we assume. He could be quite good for defensive contributions. He may even play as the number 10. and he might pick up some attacking returns as well. So at 5.5, he could be a good option, but I'm not completely sure. And if he's going to play number 10, does that mean that Xavi gets minutes out wide? And if that happens, what happens to like Tell and Odebear, etc.? Even with the Kudus injury, it still feels like there's too much uncertainty. And if I just take a look at Spurs fixtures, obviously this week quite good, West Ham at home, next week quite good, Burnley away. If you wanted to take a punt, then go for someone like Xavi for those 2 games. But after that, City at home, Man United away, Newcastle at home, Arsenal at home, it's just a bit rubbish overall. Like, Man United away is not terrible, Newcastle at home is not terrible, but as a set of fixtures for 4 game weeks, 24 to 27, it's just not great. I just would not bother spending a transfer to bring in Spurs players personally. For Liverpool, no new injury concerns, so presumably that's good for Ekitike. If you've got him, surely you have to keep him for Burnley at home. How long-term you keep him? Just play it by ear. You don't have to make that decision right now. And then Salah should be back for game week 23. So he's got 1 more game to play in African Cup of Nations. Then he should be back. Remains to be seen whether he goes straight back into the squad, what his minutes are like. Honestly, he's not going to be an FPL pick anytime soon because you're going to need to see a bit from him before you have any confidence to go back there for the money he costs. There's every chance we just don't own Salah for the rest of the season, but never say never. Let's say Liverpool get doubles in the latter stage of the season and Salah's getting good minutes. You never know. I'm just saying don't completely write it off, but also do not worry about it anytime soon. Newcastle share's going to be out for a while. From the sounds of it, for most of the rest of the season, could make an appearance towards the back end. He's had surgery. So if you've got Chow, his minutes are absolutely fine right now. Murphy's out with a hamstring problem. I don't know how long for, but if you've got Gordon, his minutes should be quite good this week and next week. Because you've got Alanga to play on the right. Barnes can play on the right as well. I mean, it could be Barnes and Alanga. I find that hard to believe. I just think Gordon will have quite good minutes next to. Livramento and Burn are still out. So presumably Lewis Hall will have to play this week because they don't really have another left back. And then for Brighton, Minte is an option following his dead leg. I just think at this point I would just get rid of Minte still if you've got him. And definitely don't buy. So for Arsenal, Mikel Arteta said there might be a chance that one of their injured players returns, but of course didn't tell us who it was. There are rumours going around that it could be Mosquera, but Nketiah I don't think was going to be out for that long either, so maybe it's him. We don't know. Either way, neither of those players are options for FPL at the moment, and there were no other new injuries reported. So the likes of Saka, Rice, Timber Gabriel, etc. should be all fine. For Crystal Palace, Oliver Glasner was very open. One, he's leaving at the end of the season. Probably doesn't matter too much for FPL right now, but obviously that's a big change for Crystal Palace. Big news to get today specifically. He's a really good coach. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up. He also confirmed that Gay won't be in the squad tomorrow because his move to Man City is in the final stages. Now, at the time recording it is not official, but basically it's happening. So from game week 23 onwards, Gay will be a Man City player. Whether that transfer is official and gets changed in FPL before the game week 22 deadline, I don't know. But given that it's not yet complete, you'd assume that Gay won't be in the squad for Man City at the weekend. It's probably going to be too quick to get the paperwork done and stuff like that. So if you've got Gay and you are hoping to play him this week, he won't play. I don't think he'll be available for Man City. He's not going to play for Crystal Palace. Going forward, if you've got him in your team, he'll just be a Man City player now. If you already had 3 Man City players and you've got Gay, you'll then have 4 Man City players. You can play them, but as soon as you want to make a transfer, you will have to come back down to 3 City players. So one of your Man City players will have to be sold before you can make any other moves. For Everton, Grealish is back from suspension. Branthwaite and Coleman are back on the grass, and David Moyes said they're getting involved with training. It doesn't sound like they're in full training yet, but Branthwaite is getting closer. Therefore, Michael Keane's place, once he's back from suspension, is at serious risk. And Dewsbury Hall, who some people some people have asked about, still not training yet. So he's going to be out for a while. And then Reinildo is back for Sunderland from African Cup of Nations, only 3.8 million. If you need someone cheap, that is who I would go for. So let's go through some benching headaches for game week 22. And there were a lot of players submitted, 25 in total this week. As always, the higher up the list a player is, the more I think you should start them. So if you've got Calvert-Lewin and Matty Cash and you're not sure who to start, Calvert-Lewin's higher up the list, therefore I think you should start him. So it goes Calvert-Lewin down to Cash, and then Mukiede's after Cash, then you've got the rest of the players. So right at the top, Calvert-Lewin should start against Fulham at home. Not a bad fixture, penalties, etc. He's quite highly rated, I would say, for game week 22. Then I've gone for Szoboszlai, purely because Salah's not there, so I'm expecting Szoboszlai to be first choice penalty taker. Burnley at home, best fixture he's going to have all season. I would want to have him quite high up the list. I will say there's a real chance he plays right back, and even if he doesn't start as the right back, he could well end up finishing the game there. It's not great. And if you guarantee me 90 minutes at right back, I'd probably bump him down the list a little bit, maybe in between like Wilson and Rice, something like that. But I think you've got to chance it. I know he's been disappointing, but if you've got him for this game, I would not be looking to bench him unless I absolutely had to. And I don't think anyone's got a team out there where Szoboszlai should be on the bench. Then Enzo Fernandez against Brentford at home. Then Raul Jimenez against Leeds away. Then Rodgers against Everton at home. I've put Rodgers below Raul Jimenez purely because of penalties. They're always a big factor in these decisions. Bruno Guimaraes Wolves away. Then Wilson against Leeds away. Some of you will look at that and say, how can Wilson be so far down? Like, how can he be below Raul Jimenez? It is the penalty factor. Like, Jimenez could have an awful game, gets a penalty, job done. Couple of bonus points, Wilson blanks. I'm always going to rate the penalty takers quite high. So, Raul Jimenez, then Rodgers, then Bruno G, then Wilson, then Rice, then Thiago. Now, I'm going to play Thiago this week, and it does feel wrong to have him so low down the list when he's got 5 goals in 2 games. And there have been plenty of times where Brentford have gone to Stamford Bridge and done really well. But on paper, Chelsea away is not a great fixture for anyone. So that's why I've got him so low down. As always, a lot of these decisions are very close. If you want to bump Thiago up, that's absolutely fine. But I've got him, I think, here in 9th place. Then Lefebvre against Palace at home. I suspect he will keep penalty duties, and I suspect he won't take another Panenka in his career. But there is obviously some doubt there, as to whether someone else might take them. But I think it'll probably be Lefebvre. Also, in the shootout that Sunderland had recently, he took first. That's a positive sign to how high up he is in the pecking order for penalty takers. Then I've gone for Cunha. Now, I'm not sure how worried we should be about Cunha. I know everyone's decided he's now a terrible pick, and that might be true, right? His minutes probably go down. He's not on penalties. He's not played well recently. City at home, Arsenal away. Every reason to sell him, but he also might just start against City at home, and it might not be terrible. So I've gone for him on the basis he starts ahead of ahead of all the defenders on the list. But I wouldn't be if someone said to me, I'm going to play Chalobah ahead of Cunha or Cash ahead of Cunha, I wouldn't argue against it. Because at least you know the likes of Chalobah, Cash with good home fixtures, some attacking threat as well, they will start. There has to be some doubts with Cunha. So my prediction is Cunha will start, therefore he is where he is on the list. I can't be 100% sure about that. As it stands, I'm going to play Cunha over Anderson for my own team, but I'll talk about that later. So Chalobah against Brentford at home. Not a bad fixture, although he does face the mighty Thiago. Then Cash against Everton at home. Then Mukiele against Palace at home. Then Van der Ven against West Ham at home. And then Konza against Everton at home. The reason that Konza is below Cash, and then there's a couple of players in between. Cash has got attacking threat. Konza does a little bit, but not as much. And Konza's just not a DEFCON defender. And this season, you've got to have an excellent fixture to go above a DEFCON guy. And so for me, Van der Ven's got a better fixture than Konza, therefore he's ahead. And Mukiele's got a more difficult fixture against Palace, but he's a good defensive contribution defender. That's why he's higher. Chow against Wolves away, then Rodon against Fulham at home, then Van Heck against Bournemouth at home, then Anderson against Leeds away. I think you're going to see a lot of people playing Anderson because he's quite a popular pick. But actually, when you look at the other players' fixtures, like he is away to Leeds. I'm not so sure there's a great chance of a clean sheet for Fulham in that game. Then Krupi Jr. So Krupi Jr. I've got behind most of the defenders. The only ones he's ahead of are the ones where I don't expect a clean sheet. Or I think there's a lot less chance of a clean sheet compared to the others. So Senesi against Brighton away, Tarkowski Villa away, Collins Chelsea away, and then O'Reilly right at the bottom. Now, if I thought Nico O'Reilly was starting, like for sure, I would probably put him somewhere around like Chow Rodon levels. But because there's some doubt there, and because I think Man United score in this game, I've put him right at the bottom. If you're more confident in his minutes, bump him up the list. Kruppi Jr., because Brooks is a doubt, Semenyo's left, Kluivert's injured, there is a good chance he starts, but I still cannot be that sure about his minutes to put him higher up this list. If you're confident he starts and he gets 70 minutes plus, then I'd probably bump him up to ahead of Lafay and behind Thiago. I'm not that confident. That's why he is where he is. As always, I get a lot of stuff wrong. You do not have to listen to me. You are your own person. It's your FPL team. If you disagree, go with your gut feeling, because all of these decisions are very close. So let's get into some of your questions. Would it be possible to look at what you think a standard Wildcard 24 team would look like? That way we can see how close we can get to it with free transfers. Now, I'm not going to go into the entire squad, but I'll talk about the core players that I would expect to see on a wildcard in Game Week 24. So Erling Haaland, pretty much a no-brainer. I don't see anyone selling him anytime soon. Triple Arsenal, because there will be a chance that they have a double in 26. It may not be confirmed at that point, although we might have a provisional announcement. But either way, Arsenal will just get good anyway. So even if they don't have the double, you'll probably still want to be tripled up. Now, I'm not going to get into a debate here about which are the three best Arsenal to have. Basically, it's probably going to be three from Saka, Rice, Timber and Gabriel. Okay, so three players from Arsenal. I think because Chelsea have a fixture swing in 24, a lot of people will want to triple up on them as well. Obviously, if over the next couple of weeks you get serious concerns about Palmer's minutes, you might go without him. But right now, if you were picking, you'd want to target those fixtures. So it's probably Chalobah, Enzo, Palmer. Maybe it becomes Cucurella, Chalobah, Enzo. Maybe you just pick two Chelsea. But right now, if I was guessing, it's three Arsenal, Haaland, three Chelsea, and then Bruno Fernandes. So that's 8 of your 15 picks. And then there's like fringe players in there. So maybe you go for Tavernier and Senesi because the Bournemouth fixtures are quite good. Maybe you go for Wilson instead of Tavernier. Maybe you go for Tavernier and Wilson. Elliot Anderson's fixtures aren't bad. Whatever, right? You can pick a few players in and around it. Maybe Thiago makes it, even though the fixture in 24, I think, is against Arsenal. I'm just going to double check that. Yeah, in 24, it's Villa away, followed by Newcastle away, Arsenal at home. So the three fixtures for Thiago aren't great, but they're pretty good longer term. So maybe he makes it. Either way, more than half of your team is made up of Haaland, triple Arsenal, triple Chelsea, and Bruno Fernandes, in my opinion. Now, my thoughts, even though you haven't asked this, right, just some quick thoughts on Wildcard 24. I'm not going to do it. Right? For my team, I'm pretty well set up. I've got a few transfers. I can get to most of those core players that people will have on Wildcard, so I'm not going to do it. And it's worth saying that, of course, all these things are team dependent. And when I say what I'm about to say, please keep in mind, I don't want a Wildcard 24. Therefore, there probably is a level of bias in terms of how I feel about it. But I'll be honest, when the noise around Game Week 24 Wildcard started, I was a little bit surprised by how many people were thinking about it. Like, I knew some people would think about it, but the level of people that are considering it, I'm surprised it's that high. I don't think it's that good. That's my honest opinion. I don't think Wildcard 24 is that good. I think it's actually quite highly overrated. Now, it's worth saying some people's teams might be in a complete mess. Maybe you've got one free transfer, a whole bunch of injuries and suspensions. There's no chance you can get anywhere near that wildcard team. Maybe your team needs it, but I don't think that's the case for the majority of people. I really don't. And the problem with 24 wildcard is you might know who is going to double in 26, Arsenal and Wolves, or whether or not that's going to happen. But you won't know for certain who's going to blank in 31, although it's pretty likely it's going to be Arsenal, City, Palace and Wolves, right? That's not a guarantee, but it looks quite likely. So you might know that, but there's so much more information to gather later on. Like, we could have a blank in 31, a double in 33, a blank in 34, and then another double in 36. And there's even, like, I was listening to James on Planet FPL, who did their chip strategy podcast, I think it was yesterday. Like, there's even a chance in certain scenarios where you might have like a really small double in Game Week 35 or something like that. You just don't have anywhere near enough information, in my opinion, to wildcard in 24. And honestly, like, The Chelsea, like triple Arsenal, fine, but most people are already on that, right? Even if you don't have the best three Arsenal, if you've got three Arsenal, you're already in a good position. Everyone's got Haaland, and like, is triple Chelsea that important? Like, all I've done this week is think about what the minutes will be like for Palmer. That's not going to change by the time you get to 24, because even if he plays 22, 23, the fixture pile-up continues to be crazy. So you're not going to have any more certainty, really, in Palmer's minutes, unless he plays like both games in the Premier League and a Champions League game and looks great. So I kind of hate Wildcard 24. Again, that is lots of bias involved there because I don't think my team needs it. So, of course, I'm a little bit more against it anyway. I just think it's a little bit overhyped. Like, to be fair, let me just counter my own point there. Chelsea and Man United are not the only teams that have good fixtures from 24, right? So Aston Villa also have quite good fixtures. So they've got Brentford at home, Bournemouth away, Brighton at home, Leeds at home, Wolves away. That is quite nice. So you could add Rodgers into the mix of players I just spoke about as a core, maybe Ollie Watkins as well. But if you're then trying to fit in Palmer and maybe Saka and Fernandes and Haaland and Rodgers and Watkins, I don't know who's got the team value to do all that anyway. So some of that probably has to be dropped. I think Crystal Palace are another team to kind of think about soon. But in 24, it's Forest away, Brighton away. So there's no rush to get them till 26 anyway for Burnley at home, Wolves at home. But then you've got to take into account that if Man City go through to the Carabao Cup final, there's a good chance that Palace will blank in 31. Now, it's not a great fixture anyway, but have you got the chances to bring them in and take them back out again? Like, you're probably not going to want triple Palace is the point I'm trying to make. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of it. I just think there are there's so much information to be gained longer term. And yes, if you wildcard in 32, it's a short window until the end of the season, but you've got so much more information about blanks and doubles, so many more points on the table. I personally don't think the gain is enough to use it in 24 versus just waiting later. And I know that's boring to say, right? We don't all want to be playing the same strategy. It's much more interesting when people go off in different routes and stuff like that. But I watched the Solio Analytics podcast actually last week. I think it was before Game Week 21, where Praz and Johnny were talking through blanks and doubles. I didn't even get to the point where they were talking about chip strategies. I only listened to the bit where they were saying how the blanks and doubles could fall. Straight away, in about 2 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, I thought that's an easy dead end 31, wildcard 32. It just makes so much sense with how the blanks and doubles are going to fall. It's boring, again. Right? It might not be the route that I go. I might go for a different one. But the only way I'm going to choose a different strategy is to get more information I won't have by 24. Anyway, I've gone on a bit of a rant there. I think it's fine. There will be some teams that need a wildcard this week, next week, 24. I'm not saying that no one should wildcard, but I would really think strongly about it. Your team, in my opinion, needs to be a proper mess to wildcard in 24. I mean a real mess, not just I've got Timber instead of Gabriel, I've got Saka instead of Rice. That's just not that important in the grand scheme of things. So if we have a good bench, should we just bench boost to get it out of the way, or should we wait for the double game weeks? I feel like even if we don't have a full bench of double game week players, it's still better to bench boost in a double, as the single game week players in a double game week are better than in a single game week. I think the person that wrote this question actually said are often better than in a single game week, but I'm not sure either way it's that true. Like, ultimately, if you're bench boosting in a week where your actual bench players have only one fixture, then all that matters is how good that fixture is. So if in the next few weeks you've got a really good bench with great fixtures, players that are definitely going to start, you should consider bench boosting. Essentially, it's possible that we will get a big enough double game week that allows us to have a full squad of double game week players. But last season that didn't really happen, and it's possible that it doesn't happen again. So there is a chance you could bench boost with 15 double game week players, but I think the reality is that probably won't happen. So the chances are when you bench boost, whenever that might be from now until game week 38, it's probably going to be mostly single game week players, not necessarily double game weekers. So I would bench boost as soon as you can if your bench looks great. If you're not sure about it, or it's just kind of okay, then I would just wait until you wildcard and figure it out afterwards. There are risks with leaving the bench boost until later on in the season, because things like, whether teams are chasing Europe, whether they're chasing places in the Premier League, etc., can all have effect on rotation that makes it more difficult to get out 15 playing players. But ultimately, my plan right now will be to bench boost at some point after I wildcard, unless I can get to a good bench with minimal transfers before that. Like if you're on a setup where you got 3 playing forward, so you don't have like a Mark Guiu like I do, then I would be tempted to see if there's any weeks coming up where your bench looks good. But I think it's got, like, great is maybe not the right word, but I wouldn't just go for anything. Like in the first half of the season, it's a bit different. Like, because there is a chance it could be huge in a double, I wouldn't just accept anything on a bench boost. Does that make sense? Like for my bench this week, I mean, I've got Guiu, so it's pretty rubbish anyway. Like Dubravka, not great. Liverpool away. Anderson's fine against against Leeds away. Senesi, Brighton away. That's not bench boost worthy to me. And Guiu's rubbish. There's no chance I would take that. If you had this, I haven't thought about this. This is going to be, okay, let's say you've got Rodon. So Rodon against Fulham at home. Let's say your goalkeeper backup is Royce for Sunderland against Palace at home for some reason rather than Dubravka. So you've got Rodon, Royce. You've got Anderson against Leeds away. And then I guess you need an attacker on there. Or it would have to be an attacker. Let's say you've got, what's the playing forwards? Welbeck against Bournemouth and you thought he was going to start. Or let's say you got Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin against Fulham, Rodon against Fulham at home, and then Royce against Palace at home, and whatever other defender I said, which I've already forgotten. Like 4 good home... Oh, sorry, Anderson against Leeds away. I mean, that's a bit annoying because you'd also have Calvert-Lewin. But honestly, you'd have 4 good players. I would be tempted to bench boost something like that, where all 4 players are pretty good this week. And then later on, when you wildcard, you don't have to think about your bench boost. But it's got to be almost perfect for me to use it now. I mean, worst case scenario, we wildcard, the bench boost is terrible, and we just kind of write it off, and maybe even go with like a super cheap forward that might not even play. But I suspect we'll be able to do something towards the end of the season. So, yeah, the plan, like, I suspect it'll be single game week players on our bench no matter when we use the bench boost. So if you have a really good bench soon, just get it used. So is Semenyo nailed? If yes, is he worth including on a wildcard in game week 22? No, he's not nailed, and therefore I would not include him on wildcard. Like, to use a term like nailed, you've got to be very confident, and I don't see how anyone can be with Semenyo. You could look at it and say he's just signed, he started the first 2 games, he's done well, he's that kind of winger that will get goals from the back post. City don't have that with Doku, Savinio, etc. You can be confident that his minutes might be okay, but there's no way you can be confident to say he's nailed. Like, would anyone be shocked if he's benched for game week 22 or 23? I wouldn't. Therefore, he's not nailed. And one point that I forgot to add about wildcard 24, if you are wildcarding this early, this far out from the blanks and doubles, you want to be sure about your picks minutes-wise because you want to be rolling transfers wherever you can. You shouldn't just be making a small sideways upgrade with transfers. The option should be to roll as many times as you can because you will need those transfers when you get to blanks and doubles. And this is not to scaremonger anyone. Anyone that does wildcard early, you will have to think a bit more about your decisions moving forward, but you will be able to manage most of the rest of the season, especially if you hold your free hit for the blanks later on. But I would not go for any dodgy picks, and for me, Semenyo is that. There is no way I would include him on a wildcard in 22. Like, you could look at it and say, I'll keep him for the next 2, then sell him. Is he that good? What if he gets benched? He's not that good, is he? And like, I know his ownership is high, but I think that's a terrible reason to pick someone. He's either good or he's not. I wouldn't just pick him because his ownership is high. If anything, that's a reason to take him on if you don't think the minutes are there. So not nailed. I don't think anyone can say that. I wouldn't. It'd be way too dodgy for me to have on wildcard 22. For what it's worth, by the way, if you've got him, I think there's serious temptation just to keep him and see what happens over the next 2. But that's a completely different question. Someone that's not wildcarding, that already owns him, that doesn't have to use a transfer, absolutely, by all means, take the risk that he plays the next 2. Wildcard, no chance. So another Man City question here. What to do with Cherki, keep or sell? Again, you already own him. You don't have to use a transfer to bring him in. I would keep him. I think Man United away and Wolves at home is pretty good for Man City. And of course, there is no guarantee that Cherki starts either game, let alone both. But he was just benched in the Carabao Cup. I think that's a fairly good sign that he comes back in for Man United away. It's worth saying, Pep doesn't necessarily work like that. You've heard me say with Saka already this week that I hope that he'll play this game because Madueke will play the Champions League, Saka will play the Premier League, Madueke will play the next Champions League, etc. Pep doesn't necessarily always keep it that simple. It might have been that Cherki didn't start the Carabao Cup because Pep didn't think he was the best way to win that game. He may think the same against Man United away. There is a chance he just gets bench Champions League and bench Man United away, but the next two fixtures on paper are quite good. And ultimately, I don't think there's a huge amount of midfielders to buy this week that are amazing for 22 and 23 either, outside of short-term punts, but then you could consider Cherki a punt in itself anyway. So I definitely would not buy him, but if I had him, I'd be pretty tempted to hold on for the next two and then probably get rid afterwards. So is there an argument to buy Saka this week? Even if I thought the answer was yes, there is an argument to buy him. I'd almost be afraid to say it because so many people feel like they're against him as a pick right now. They just don't rate him that highly. Not everybody, but a big majority of FPL managers just don't rate Saka at this point in time. And obviously you've got to play the game the way you think is best and shut out the noise. But when so many people are saying it, it does make you think. So why do they think that? One is minutes. We've seen him get subbed early recently. We've seen him get benched as well. Madueke is a good player, a really good backup for Saka. And obviously Saka played the full match against Chelsea in the Carabao Cup midweek. Madueke got 0 minutes. So there is a chance that Madueke starts against Forest. My personal opinion is Saka will start this game and Madueke will play the Champions League. It's very clear that Arteta doesn't want to use Saka 3 times in a week, but using him twice is probably okay. And Saka got a rest in the FA Cup. So I think he will start against Forest. But as somebody pointed out on a video this week already, I thought he'd start against Bournemouth and that didn't happen. So there is slight risk there with Saka's minutes. And for over 10 million, you could definitely argue you don't want that kind of risk. So I think he will start. And I think he's a pretty good option over the coming weeks. But there are some doubts about his minutes. The other thing that always gets mentioned is how much better value Rice is. And yes, he has been better value so far this season. But you look at Saka's underlying numbers, 0.27 expected goals per 90 according to the stats on Hub, 0.27 expected assists per 90. So they're both taken from Fantasy Football Hub's Opta Stats tool. As always, if you want to check that out and all the other stuff they've got to offer, links in the description below. They are good numbers. That's about, it's almost double what Declan Rice is putting out in terms of attacking threat. Now, Declan Rice obviously has DEFCONs as well, but at some point, it's possible that if Saka continues to get good minutes in the league, which again are slightly risky, that his output goes up in terms of goals and assists, and Rice's maybe comes down a little bit. So I agree that Rice has been better value, but if you're asking me who I'd rather captain, if there's any fixtures there you like for Arsenal, it's definitely Saka. I think game week 25, where he's got Sunderland at home, Haaland's got Liverpool away, and if there's a double in 26, I prefer captaining Saka over Rice. So is there an argument to buy him? Yes. But I guess, I don't know, part of me thinks I would just put that decision off for a few more weeks and just see what happens. See if the rotation does fit perfectly, where Madueke does get the Champions League games, etc., then buy him. But also, it feels good just to get 3 Arsenal in because the fixtures are decent. Like, I guess I'll leave it at this. If I was wildcarding this week and picking 3 Arsenal, Saka would be in my top 2. I'm pretty sure he would be, with Gabriel. And then I would pick between Rice and Timber. And that would depend on other factors like which other midfielders do I like, which other defenders do I like. I still think Timber Gabriel plus 1 attacker is the best way. Because there's lots of good midfielders that I like. There's not so many defenders. So as much as I think Rice is good, I think the gap between him and other midfielders is not necessarily as high as the gap between Gabriel and Timber and the other defenders. So I like Gabriel Timber, and then I would pick Saka over Rice because of potential captaincy. I acknowledge that could go completely wrong. Like, Saka could start against Brentford away and then start the FA Cup, and Madueke could start Wolves away in a double in 26 if the double happens, which it might not. But I still think I'd rather have... Like, I just think if you guarantee me almost the same minutes, I'd pick Saka over Rice every time for captaincy, no question. Obviously, you could just captain Gabriel, by the way, if there is a double. That's not a problem. And so you can absolutely go Timber, Gabriel, Rice. I'm just saying, for me, I'm pretty sure I would pick Saka because I'm pretty sure I would want him longer term. But again, I own him. I've had him since game week 11 or 12, something like that. I'm probably a little bit biased. Maybe I want it to work and therefore I'm leaning more towards his minutes will be fine. They might not be. I'm going to look like a proper idiot if he gets benched against Forest, but this game's about making predictions. My prediction is he'll start. I think he's a pretty good pick over the next 4 or 5 weeks, but if I didn't have to buy him this week, I probably would put it off a little bit longer. So is Ollie Watkins a better pick now that Marlon has left Aston Villa? His minutes should improve. I mean, the simple answer to the question is yes, he does become a better pick. There's less competition, so he should start even more games than he already was, and he should get sub less as well. So there could still be some early substitutions, but they're probably not going to be as early as if Marlon was there. So yes, I think he becomes a better pick. Do I think he's worth picking in FPL though? That I'm still a little bit less sure about. Like, he's 8.8 million. It's Everton at home, Newcastle away next two, which are not bad, but it's worth pointing out the transfer window is still open. I find it very hard to believe that Aston Villa aren't going to bring in a player that can play in that number 9 role. Going with Watkins for the rest of the Premier League season and the fact they're still in Europe, cup competitions, etc., feels a little bit crazy. So I'm a bit like, Semenyo's left and Kluivert's got injured, therefore Krupi will play. Bournemouth will buy a player or two. I'm pretty sure Aston Villa will do the same. So my preference would be, unless you're desperate for a forward this week, wait and see what happens after game week 23, whether or not Villa have signed someone, and then maybe look to pick him up game week 24 onwards. Because Newcastle away, it's not a terrible fixture, but on paper it's not great either. It's not one that you would look to target. So waiting until 24, where they got Brentford at home, Bournemouth away, Brighton at home, Leeds at home, that seems better to me. It's worth pointing out the transfer window does not shut by the game week 24 deadline. So the 24 deadline is on Saturday. The transfer deadline shuts on Monday. So there is obviously the chance that you buy Watkins, then they sign someone else after the deadline. But presumably, in most cases, you will have a lot of information about what the rumoured moves are. And the chances are Villa will sign someone that's definitely a backup to Watkins. So Watkins will clearly still be first choice. I find it hard to believe they'll sign someone to come in ahead of Watkins, but it doesn't matter in terms of his minutes. They will still come down a little bit. And for 8.8 million, a forward with no penalties, I think you want to be sure that he's a good pick. And I think the conversation is very similar to Ekitike. Like, maybe if you're not going to go for Palmer or Saka, then it's probably easier to have an Ekitike. But if you want the opportunity to get someone like that in, like Saka or Palmer or maybe both, having an expensive forward like Watkins or Ekitike makes that a bit tricky. It's not to say they're bad picks. You just need to think about the moves you're going to want to make in the future. So Watkins is fine. He does become a better pick. I'd still be a little bit cautious about buying him right now, but I don't think it's terrible or anything like that. Same with Rodgers, right? I've got no real plans to buy him anytime soon, but he's still a perfectly reasonable pick. So should we sell or keep Michael Keane? Ultimately, for me, he's a sell. It just depends on your individual team when you need to do that. So he's suspended for 22 and 23, so he can't play against Villa away, Leeds at home. And obviously we're expecting Branthwaite to come back pretty soon. And once he's back and fit, he will play. And I don't expect Tarkowski to come out of the team. So when Branthwaite's fit, and as long as Tarkowski's fit and available, Michael Keane, in my opinion, will just get benched. So there is a chance you miss him for the next 2 through suspension, and then he's just benched after that anyway. So long term, he is a sell, but for most of you, you probably picked him up a little bit cheaper than 4.8 million. So if you're sat there this week, your team looks good, you've got 3 good defenders, you're not likely to need any players coming off your bench or anything like that, you can just hold him. If you're not sure which defender to buy, or you want to put the decision off until 23-24, that's fine. I just don't see him being a long-term option. So on the flip side, if you're sat there thinking, I need to get a defender in this week, I don't know who to sell, I would probably just sell Keane. I find it very hard to believe that he's starting the majority of matches between 24 and 27 when he would be back. So probably got to go. Obviously, if you can just hold him and bench him for 2 weeks and then reassess, that's fine. But I just don't see him being an option anymore. So I'm just going to go through some final thoughts for my own team ahead of tomorrow's deadline. I've got 3 free transfers and 0.1 million in the bank. And essentially, I think I've got to sell Paquetá. Like, I could just roll and play 4-4-2 and put Joachim Andersen in instead. But Paquetá being sold just feels like an inevitability. Like, there are so many rumours about him leaving West Ham. And then in the press conference on Thursday, Nuno said that he's a bit of a doubt. Now, is he really a doubt? Does he actually have a back issue? potentially. That's what he went off with injured a few weeks ago. Then he missed a game, but then he was back. So has it just flared up again, or is it just all this transfer speculation? It's hard to know, but I know that he's a doubt. And there's no guarantee he'll be back next week for Sunderland at home. So I think I'm going to sell him. I mean, honestly, even while just talking that out, there is part of me that thinks actually just roll. Because if he does play Sunderland at home next week, that's quite good. But it just feels like that's so just clutching at straws. Like, I think ultimately he's a big problem and he's probably got to go. So I probably will sell him, and I probably will play 3-5-2 with Joachim Andersen on the bench. And I think I'm going to buy Tavernier. Harry Wilson is really in my thinking as well. 5.9 million, so the same price that I paid for Paquetá. He's put up some pretty good numbers so far this year. So yes, he might be overperforming a little bit, but he's putting up around 0.4 expected goal amount, which is similar to what he did last year. My worry with him are his long-term minutes. And I know what people will say. He's playing so well, he just keep playing. 80, 90 minutes every week. Maybe that happens, right? Marco Silva has mentioned how well he's playing, the form he's in right now. He probably wouldn't want to drop him, but once African Cup of Nations finishes, Fulham get like 2 or 3 players back, like Iwobi, etc. That's all has an impact on other players' minutes. And I don't see Wilson getting benched, but could he get subbed off early? Like earlier on in the season, there was a period where he played 90 minutes in game week 12, but either side of that, it was 76, 58, 67, 81. Now, he's great, right? And he'll probably continue to be great, but it's not a guarantee. And I just don't like players I'm not sure about. Whereas, one that's extremely boring, but should continue to be a good pick, is Tavernier, who's not great for the next 2, by the way. Brighton away, Liverpool at home. But after that, Wolves away, Villa at home, Everton away, West Ham away, Sunderland at home, Brentford at home, Burnley away, Man United at home in 31. My strategy is to probably wildcard 32 as it stands. That could change. But if I do that, the fixtures afterwards are Arsenal away, Newcastle away. I just don't have him then. But I've got him for the good ones before. So I don't really want to buy Tavernier this week, if I'm completely honest. Like Brighton away, Liverpool at home is just not good. I'd much rather just keep Paquetá for 2 weeks and then make a decision in 24. But all the Paquetá speculation is making me think just make this move right now. Honestly, I'd rather not do it. I'd love to roll to 4 free transfers next week. But I feel like I've got to deal with Paquetá now. And also, part of the reason why I feel like I've got to do it now is it doesn't become any easier next week to buy a midfielder, basically. So if Paquetá's still a problem next week, I will need to move him on. And then it's rubbish to have bought Tavernier before Liverpool at home, essentially. Again, I could go for Wilson, but I've just got some concerns. The other player I like at this price point is Andersen. I just think at 5.3 million, he's continually ticking over with defensive contributions. But buying him before Arsenal at home just feels rubbish. Like in that case, I probably do just roll. Like maybe I roll and buy him next week. I don't want this to turn into a long ramble because I'm not 100% locked in on Paquetá to Tavernier. Maybe I just buy Andersen next week. The thing is, if Tavernier is going to be first choice penalty taker, that's quite valuable. Like this is a player that's already on 4.1 points per game so far this season. 5.5 million, can play wide, can play number 10. He's played so many 90-minute games. There is the odd benching, but it doesn't happen that often, especially with the players they've got available right now. I think I'm going to do Paquetá to Tavernier. I'm not 100% sure about it. I'm really not. But I feel like that's the move I've got to make. The more interesting discussion for my team is what do I do with Cunha? Now, I could keep him and bench him in 23, sell him in 24. I am tempted to make a double move this week. Cunha out for Enzo. And then, by the way, if I do Cunha to Enzo, I've got 7.5 million to spend on the Paquetá replacement. It doesn't have to be like a Tavernier or an Andersen or a Wilson. But I don't think I'm going to spend that money because it would have to, I can't go for Rice because I've got triple Arsenal. So maybe someone like Bruno Guimaraes. But after the next 2 fixtures, Wolves away, Villa at home, like it's Liverpool, Spurs and City all away from home in the next 4. So I don't really want to go there. I can't buy Rodgers because he's 7.7. There is a chance I buy Rodgers in 24, by the way. I won't go into longer term future thoughts right now. But there is a chance I buy him in 24, but I can't do it this week because of money. Now, I could go... I mean, maybe I should think about this. I could go Tavernier and Rodgers. That would be an option. But then I haven't, like... I don't know. Is Rodgers better than Enzo? Maybe. But he's also 1.2 million more expensive. I don't think I can buy Rodgers instead of Enzo. I think I have to come back to it. Do you know what? Why not? It's my video. I can do what I want. You don't have to watch if you don't want to. Basically, the plan will be, if I go Enzo and Tavernier, the plan will be to fund Foden to Fernandes later on, and then Szoboszlai up to an 8.1 midfielder. Now, that could be in Bournemouth, but it also could just be Rodgers. So potentially in game week 24, where there's a fixture swing for Man United, Villa, maybe not for Villa because the fixtures are quite good now, but from 24, the fixtures are still good for Villa. Fixture swing for Man United, fixture swing for Chelsea. I could have Rodgers, Fernandes and Enzo and just forget about Palmer. That's what's on my mind. I just know, and again, I bored you with this on the team selection yesterday, so I will try and make it quick. If I get Enzo and Tavernier now, getting Palmer and Bruno in 24 without selling Saka, which I won't want to do because Arsenal might double in 26, it becomes quite difficult without selling Thiago. And I don't really want to sell Thiago. So I'm going to do Paquetá to Tavernier. I'm pretty sure about that. Cunha to Enzo, I think basically is me telling myself I'm not buying Palmer. Maybe that's okay. Maybe I should just forget about him. Because ultimately, you look at the fixtures 24 to 27. Let's just have a really quick look at them. So the key thing is always, who does Haaland have? Who does Saka have as an alternative captain? So Haaland has Spurs away. So potentially, Palmer captain against West Ham at home could be quite nice if he doesn't start the Champions League game before that. If he does, that game might be a problem. We'll have to wait and see. Saka's got Leeds away. Maybe I could consider him. So maybe 24, Palmer's a genuine captain option. 25, when Haaland's got Liverpool away, Palmer has Wolves away. Potential captain opportunity. But 3 days later, it's the Leeds game. So if he's going to get rested, is it against Wolves or Leeds? Probably Wolves, right? But I suspect he will start. So maybe I am talking myself into him being an option. But Saka's got Sunderland at home. So I could go for him instead. 26, if there's an Arsenal double, I'm definitely captaining an Arsenal player. And then 27, when Palmer's got Burnley at home, that's potentially either side. Sorry, that's in between, I think, 2 Champions League playoff games. So does Palmer definitely start the Burnley game? I think that one I'd be quite worried about. And Haaland's got Newcastle at home. So I could just captain him anyway. Palmer is giving me such a headache, honestly. Because you could just look at it and say it's just not worth them. But the fixtures are that good, 24 to 27. The only thing that keeps... I mean, there's lots of things that keep coming back to me about the Palmer situation. The one shred of hope that I would cling on to if I decide to not go for him is he can only punish me for 4 game weeks. Because after that, the fixtures aren't great. Arsenal away, Villa away, Newcastle at home, Everton away. So I know the pain is only short term. And if I can keep up with Palmer owners, I've saved myself a transfer. I haven't messed up my structure or anything like that. And I could get away with it. So yeah, Paquetá to Tavernier, I think, kind of has to happen. Or Wilson, but I don't think I'm going to go for Wilson. I'm tempted to do... I know I missed the price rise on Enzo last night, but I'm very tempted to do Cunha to Enzo and forget about Palmer. I don't know if Cunha's terrible. He might just keep starting. The thing is, it's going to be a back 4, and it means that 2 of Cunha, Ahmad, and Mount are probably getting benched most weeks. And so even if Cunha starts, the early subs are there. And plus, it's Arsenal away in 23. I think I should do Cunha to Enzo, Paquetá to Tavernier. It's just something about that. It's Cole Palmer's play. I know, and everyone keeps telling me he's just rubbish. He hasn't done anything for ages anyway. He's 10 million. You don't know if he's going to start. You're right. But do I want to block that potential opportunity? I don't know. I'm going to leave it there. Absolutely not. My defence is fine. Raya, Van Dijk, Gabriel, Lewis Hall. Szoboszlai against Burnley's fine. Foden, I'm just going to chance that he starts. He should be okay. Saka, I think, is great. He's kind of okay. And Thiago, I've got to play him. I'm going to bench Anderson and Senesi. There we go. Paquetá to Tavernier. I would not be surprised if on the deadline stream tomorrow I do Cunha to Enzo. But unless the price changes are going to affect it, I won't do it tonight. I'll make my decision on Saturday. Thank you for watching. Give it a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button. And I'll catch you again tomorrow for the deadline stream, which is going to start at 9 AM UK time. See you then.